Jake Pentland of the Jake Pentland Show. Welcome. Are you there, Eli?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, I'm back.
Well, sweet. Well, welcome back, everybody. I don't want to give the whole history, and I get confused because we did a test show last week, and I can't remember how much I talked there. But for those of you who don't know, Eli and I did a radio show on KCA Radio in San Bernardino for a year. We filled in for my mother. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do, but I am Roseanne Barr's son, and I filled in for her radio show for about a year. And let's just say it ended rather abruptly. She's now doing the show again. I think Johnny, her boyfriend, does it on Sundays in my place. But it was her show originally, so I try not to get too butthurt about it. But it was rather ugly there at the end. I started to talk about feminism and equality amongst the sexes. And for those of you who haven't heard, I talk about everything. I jump from topic to topic. But I'm passionate about humanity, and I'm mostly passionate about people accepting responsibility for where they're screwed up in their own lives. So sometimes I call people out rather aggressively. It comes from a good place. Anyhow, I may have upset my mother a little bit by talking about equality, not something she was very fond of. She is what she says on a mission to bring back the matriarchy, which is a female-ran world, female goddesses and women-ran politics. So when I pointed out that I think we should all work together, it got ugly. We fought on the last show I did on AM radio. It was basically an hour long of my mother and me fighting. It was uncomfortable for a lot. The most uncomfortable thing for me was that at that radio station I had a board operator, and my mother was his boss. And when I asked him to hang up on her because she was literally yelling at me, he wasn't going to, and I don't really blame him. We miss Joe. But here I am at Blog Talk Radio, unscriptedradio.com. Mike and Jeff, who host Unscripted Radio, gave me this opportunity, and here I am, basically the same show, but I'm now on the Internet. I can swear, I can mute people when they yell at me, and I can hang up on them. I have all sorts of power now, and I'm drunk with it. So that's pretty much catching you all up. So this is the show. Eli is my best friend and co-host. You can say hello, Eli.
Hey, everyone. What exactly did – what do I not sound like I'm here?
That's better, yeah. Try and wake up people. Okay.
What exactly was the major disagreement with your mother about?
Well, I'm over it. I've done a lot of emotional repair the last 3 months, mostly aided by Tim Tebow and his rise to prominence. So I will just say that it was mostly an issue of feminism, and I think my mother, because she is a feminist, has done a lot of wonderful things for females in her career, felt that since I was her son that I represented her, and anything I said that was of an anti-quote-unquote feminist agenda was a deliberate slap in her face. And I kind of understand that, except that I didn't go on the air saying, all women should be in the kitchen sucking my balls or anything like that. If anyone listened to the show, what I was talking about was equality, and what I'm confused about, what her and I fought about mostly, was that I guess there's a difference between equality and respecting both genders for their strengths and weaknesses than there is of her version of feminism, which in my opinion was sexist and its nature just the opposite way. I mean, for me, if you're a feminist, that's great. You want women to have equal rights and blah, 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 but that doesn't mean that you have to go and say how horrible men are. It shouldn't really matter. Men should not come into the equation. Like, if I got in a rally and say, hey, we're going to have a cool rally for Bronco fans, I'm not going to sit there and rag on Raider fans the whole time. We're going to talk about our team. So I don't necessarily agree with her approach, which is to what I felt was a lot of man bashing. And that was the point I made was, hey, do you want to talk about feminism and equality and all that stuff and equal pay for equal time? I'm like, that's great. We can have those discussions on the show. I would love to, but can you please stop blaming every issue on the planet on men, because women are culpable too. We're all humans. And it isn't fair to me for you to sit there and say you hate that men are sexist because men are stupid, because where I come from, which is a logical place, that is also sexist. So that was the only point I made. I was just trying to say that just because you're on the other side of the argument doesn't necessarily mean you're right. You're just wrong in the opposite way. It's still sexist by its nature. And, my sisters got involved, and it was kind of funny because I am, the only man, and, I have three older sisters, and my mother, of course, I have a father, but, I was the only one talking about that, let's say. So my sisters were equally offended as my mother. So here I am, the youngest son in a family of women, and talking about how I had issues with their feminism, and they saw me as pretty much every man that ever wronged them or ever wronged any woman in the history of time, and were citing, history from thousands of years ago that wasn't even accurate, and it just got ugly. I really don't want to talk about it much more. I just want to say that I'm happy to be here on Unscripted Radio with Mike and Jeff, and I feel like this is a good place for me because here I can bring up a situation saying, I can ask feminists to call and go, do you think your feminism has gotten to the point where it's sexist? And I can have a logical debate. There's no family issues that come in because it's not my mom's radio show. She's not going to feel as though I represent her here. This is my own show, so I can talk about my own things. And I'm excited about that because I never really was criminal in anything I said or disrespectful. I just was pointing out that there was a little bit of hypocrisy there, and now I'm free to do that, and I'm excited. I haven't sworn once either, which is shocking. We've already been on, 7 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I asked you a pretty serious question, just out of curiosity, and you're just rehashing the past as to what happened to the list, to kind of like reiterate to our listeners and give them a quick summary of what took place and why we're here.
Yeah, because a lot of it got the fight went over and bled over to Twitter, and so a lot of people, most of the people that are listening right now, know me through my mom through Twitter, or the reality show. So
right.
It got a little ugly. I don't think everybody understands my family totally. It looks really probably a lot uglier than it really was. I mean, we have those kind of discussions in my family. We're very politically passionate, as anyone that follows my mother knows. I mean, she's running for president, for Christ's sake. So there is a lot of passion in my family, and if you have an opinion, you're encouraged, and it's one of the good things my mother did growing up. You're encouraged to express your opinion and fight for it, and we like debate. We like fighting and debate. There's no weirdness. There was a lot of things on Twitter saying, God, it's going to be so awkward at Thanksgiving this year, but it's not like that. I mean, we can have these fights about politics and be instantly, close 30 seconds later. So it never got that ugly, but it did get to the point where, I'm here on the Internet and I'm not on AM radio. So, there's that. There was obviously something.
Also, like what I've noticed getting to know your family over the years is that the way you guys talk to each other is in a lot of families, especially mine, could be incredibly insulting, but most of the time you guys are joking with each other.
Yeah, so there's that too. But there
so
there was also a few insults from here and there. I mean, anyone that follows me and Jenny on Twitter, I mean, it's basically insults and fat jokes back and forth. And I think people have now figured out that, that's our way of saying I love you. So we're screwed up in a weird way, but again, that's the last I ever want to talk about it. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk about, feminism or humanity, because, again, I'm passionate about equality of all people. And I think most of the problems in this world, I'd go as far as to say, 95% of them are most people looking at their world through this kind of screwed lens, whatever their dysfunction is, whatever they were brought up, whatever baggage they have, or, a bully pushed them, or a woman did this to them, and they're reacting a lot out of fear and out of anger, and they look at the world through that lens. And if you just pull back and look at humanity, you read a newspaper, or you see an article, anytime an article comes up, I think a lot of people read it and are kind of confused, like that couple that raised their boy gender neutral, which we're going to talk about today. I don't look at that as like, oh, this is a political thing. I kind of looked at it and went, something's wrong with that mother and father. There's an issue there. And I read the article. We'll get into it, but 30 seconds into it, I can already see that she had, a totally effeminate father and an overbearing mother. And here she is talking about how sexism and gender roles aren't specific, like it's some normal thing. But you can tell she's grew up in a weird situation compared to other people, and that's how she's viewing the world. And now she's raising her child, her son, gender neutral. So, like I said, we're going to get that in a second. I'm trying not to jump around. But the biggest problem is we all get fucked up along the way. Life is hard. Nobody gets out of here alive. Nobody's perfect. And every time you get hurt or you get your feelings hurt, you tuck it away, and it begins to color your view of the world. And, in the feminism case, I never said that, there weren't wrong things that happened to women. I never said any of that. That wasn't even the point. My point was nowadays, and here in America, we are working towards equality. Huge strides have been made. There's things that still need to be worked on. But at this point, it's time to put down the arm, so to speak, about how men are destroying women day to day and keeping them in the kitchen and beating them when, women vote with, the they work. There's CEOs that are females. I mean, if you look at America the last 40 years, there's been huge progress made. So I think at this point, all I was saying to the feminists is, hey, you've come a long way. There's still ways to go, but I think we're at the point now where we don't need to start accusing each other of things that happened in the 1800s. Okay, it's a different America today. There is equality. It is happening. So let's stop the insult. But most of the feminists today are very reactive and very angry about their history, and they're choosing to look at it through that lens.
Yeah, I mean, just like the achievement of, like you mentioned, the pendulum has swung way, way to the left. And it's almost never really good enough, what they're trying to achieve. It will never be good enough, especially with this whole progressive movement. It's like, what is it that you're trying to achieve with, the values that I guess leftism carries, which is equality, this equality movement. I mean, there are differences between genders. There are differences, between a lot of people, especially amongst age range to gender. I mean, everywhere. So I don't know. It's confusing. I get exposed to a lot of it. So, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
Jake?
No, I'm listening. That's the point. It's like, Martin Luther King, who's a hero of mine and many people. It's like there is a point where it's good to stand up against things and say things are wrong and to boycott or, even sometimes it is fighting, sometimes it is war, sometimes it's passive, whatever. But, people that stand up and point out where things are wrong, they're great people. But Martin Luther King didn't sit there and, if you listen to the man's speeches, I mean, they were about joining everybody together. He didn't go up there and go, we got to kill all the crackers in the street today. He said, I have a dream we'll all, our kids will play together and they won't judge each other by color. It was this completely all-engrossing speech. And that's a civil rights movement. That's the way to do it. And that's why that guy's a hero of mine because, there was never a shooting or a thing that he called for. He asked for boycotts and he did a lot of passive resistance that he learned from. His hero was Gandhi. And here's a guy that was, in the middle of horrible things that were happening in America at the time, he could have got up and said, hey, we're pissed, the white man's been keeping us down. Let's all band together and kill him. I mean, he could have done that. He didn't. It was he's a very religious, devout man, and he did that message. And to me, I look at that guy and I go, that's how things get done. The crazy lefto wackos that I get mad at, they do have power from time to time because they can spread a positive message through love, but it involves having everybody meet on equal terms. It involves not being insulting or separatist. It involves saying, look, we are all sons and daughters of God, and we should all live together. And he just kept saying that day to day. I have a dream. And it was always positive, for the most part, what he said. And so what I told my mom in the fight, the feminist, the last thing I'll say is that I said that to her. It's like, I'm pro-feminism. I think it's a beautiful movement, and there's just a point where you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because now all you're doing is sitting there saying men are fucking idiots and they're stupid and they can't do anything right. And they start all wars and it's like this constant berating of men. And now it's gotten so far that men nowadays don't even know how to be men. We're born guilty. And so now we have these wives and girlfriends that are constantly telling us, hey, you need to do this better. We're trying now men are taking 4 hours to get ready. They don't know how to defend themselves. They can't even change oil in the goddamn car. They have girl-like haircuts. They're completely gender neutral. Nobody knows. Everybody feels bad. Everyone's screwed over. Men feel guilty. We don't want to push women around. But then the weird thing is, women are also attracted to men that take charge. So they're sitting here telling you, hey, you ran everything in the ground. You're a terrible person. But can you please, take charge? And it's a horrible thing that people don't understand. And most of my listeners are fans of moms. Most of them are women. And I'm trying to sit there and get this message out to them. It's like, hey, why don't you try and be a little bit more inclusive in your approach? You know what I mean? Like Martin Luther King, why don't you talk about I have a dream where someday women that works the same job as a man will make the same amount of money, but, blah, 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 whatever you want to do. Instead of going, men are keeping us down. That's the only point I was trying to make. And, again, there's that color lens that I was talking about where because they're so reactive, because they feel so abused or manipulated or whatever it is, they can't let that bond go. They're still seeing the world that way, and the world isn't that way. And maybe the world is, but America's not. And we're here in the U.S., so just tone it down, bitches, a little bit. That's all I'm saying. And here we lead into this article. I don't know if any of you know. This is actually what I want to do the show today, now that I've gotten all my stuff out of the way. There's a couple, an English couple. I'd love you guys to call in about this. Man and woman, and they have 3 kids. and they have a boy named Sasha. Born a boy, got a penis. There's no double vaginas or anything weird. And they decided, they're a little progressive in their approach, that they didn't want the kid to grow up with these weird stereotypes of gender, and they basically didn't tell their friends or family. Maybe I think they told their their closest friends and family that it was a boy. They named him Sasha, and they let him play with dolls and whatever he wanted to play with, and sort of this parental approach, this progressive liberal parental approach of like, hey, let's let the kids determine what they want, and we don't want to put him in a box. And Sasha's now, I think, 5. And he just started the first grade, and the school demanded that they tell them his gender, but he couldn't start school. So then they just came out that he's a boy. So everyone at the school knows he's a boy. He's starting first grade. First day of school, we all know how hard that was. And he's wearing a blouse with slacks. He's wearing a half female, half pants, and he's going to school his first day of first grade. So I'm going to hold off any of my ramblings just now. I want to encourage callers. This is kind of how the show's going to be from now on. I'll probably tweet a little bit more in advance of what the topic's going to be. I'm still new to this, but I don't know if you called in to say hi or whatever, but this is what I want to talk about today, because this is in line with everything I talk about, because this woman, this mother, if you read her interviews, she has an interesting upbringing herself, and while I understand her approach, I think it's very, very narcissistic to use your kids as a sort of a political pulpit or whatever you want to call it, to try and make a point with your kid. And that's what I want to talk about. So if anyone's got any issues, or maybe they think it's great, or whatever you want to talk about, this couple, this boy, Sasha, is now 5 years old, and he lives as gender neutral. He's not a boy, he's not a girl. He's choosing that. They say he chose that. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. When you're under 5, you don't choose anything. You're born into your parents. The way your parents raise you is the way you're going to grow up. So to sit there and say the kid asked for, this kind of life is absurd. So please call in. I encourage you. The call-in number is 323-417-6705.
All right, it looks like we have some callers here. Do you see it on the left side, Jake?
Yes, I do. We got Phoebe from Utah, who I think this is actually going to be an interesting topic, so I'm going to go right to Phoebe, because Phoebe, it says here in the note, and I twittered with this woman, she actually has a bald head and combs over like a man and wears suits. Is that correct, Phoebe?
Yeah, you got it.
Is it part of a... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do it at times. Right now I'm let it grow out, but
is it?
It's an experiment in sociology.
Okay, well then you can speak on it. Are you aware of this couple?
No, I hadn't heard about Sasha, but I just wanted to say that me doing a comb-over has nothing to do with my sexuality or my orientation, and it was more to kind of throw people's idea of gender back in their face.
Okay.
And make them have to kind of decide, where they are and how they feel about their own gender.
So, do you shave your head, or you actually have thinning hair?
Oh, no, I shave it.
So you shave it like
from having shoulder-length hair to doing a comb-over, so.
And you wear a suit and a tie, or that's just in the picture?
Well, yeah, if I'm going out and masquerading is what I like to call it, as a man, sure. That's not a lifestyle.
Okay.
It's just to go out and provoke people's thought, mostly.
Well, are you, it's kind of like a drag queen, right? Just the flip side?
Well, most drag kings, as they like to be called, are, lesbians, and they are in troupes, and they perform kind of stage shows.
And
but
you're not?
This isn't. No, it has nothing really to do with that at all.
So it's really, you're trying to make a political statement, which is what specifically?
Yeah, and I bring up the difference between men and women and how we perceive each other, and our own sexuality is mixed in with that as well. Most of the time, men are a little more receptive to it because women feel it's such a betrayal to them and their femininity. And I of course, threw my vanity out the window. If you do something like that. You know, you don't care what people think about what you look like, obviously.
Well, I'm just curious, is it, so it's like a political statement, right?
In a way,
I want to understand you, and then now you have a medium to explain it. So I don't really understand, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I don't know what you're trying to say. It's the picture's funny. I mean, we tweeted back and forth, but I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to say.
Basically, when I meet someone, they look at me and either they get the illusion and they just treat me like a man, and so I have a perspective of how they, the difference between how men and women are treated, just on a, general basis out in public.
Have you found a difference?
Yeah, there is a lot of difference. Being an old fat man, nobody kind of looks at you twice. But I can be a fat 58-year-old woman and, I can get a cattle call, kind of thing.
So you're saying it's easier to live as a woman?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's fascinating to me. I remember when Eddie Murphy did that, where he dressed up as a white man on Saturday Night Live. Remember that early in the 80s?
Yeah.
So you're actually, when you're a woman, people are nicer to you, or they go out of their way to help you, or?
Well, for instance, children, you're a grandmother and you're safe. But
right.
If you're a man, you could be anything and you're kind of scary.
Right.
And they don't give you eye contact. And, men look at me as a man, and it's a high five dude, kind of thing. And women kind of look at me like, it's amazing to just go through that process.
I find it fascinating. Billy Gordon, who's a doctor, calls on my show a lot. I'm expecting his call soon. He's a doctor, but he lived, and it was a lifestyle for him. He actually lived as a woman. It wasn't for a political process. It was, he was living as a woman, I think, for 15 years. And him and I had a private discussion, which is a show him and I are going to do together very soon, actually. It's cool that you're calling in. He said the exact same thing. It's so much easier to be a woman. And he did it, he's homosexual and he was living as a woman and blah, blah, blah. But he said that after a while, when he decided to go back to be a man, he occasionally, I don't want to misquote him, but I believe he said he would occasionally dress up as a woman just so he can go out and, people would be nicer, buy him drinks. He said people would open the door. They're much more polite. And he said, as someone, he had an interesting perspective, as do you. And I find it odd that both of you say that it was better as a woman, because all I ever hear is that it's, it's a man's world. And women don't have this or that, and men got everything, and it's a boys' club. Not saying that isn't true, but it's just I find it interesting that anyone that's ever kind of spread back and forth between the two sees a difference.
Let's just say I am what I consider a feminist.
Right.
And just playing a man's part has given me a lot of insight as to being a feminist.
Right.
And the power that men do have. And when it comes right down to it, it's like you're saying about men kind of feeling like, they've got the air blown out of them with feminists because I feel like, of course, as a woman, I have all the horror stories about abusive men, et cetera, and yet at the same time, I have a lot of compassion for men. And as a matter of fact, I had a friend that was wearing a rug, a real bad rug. And I told him, why don't you lose that rug? You're old enough now and bald is in. Just shave it. And he says, well, you don't know how it feels to be a man, and trying to attract a woman.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And he wouldn't talk to me for about 2 years, and then finally he came back, and of course he'd lost the rug and had come around to my point of view. But in that interim, he struggled with it. And that's kind of my point, is just to bring men and women together and talk about it and understand each other's feeling. I'm glad you're doing this show because, I think you have a great insight into this.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a weird thing because obviously men and women, it's not like, cats and dogs or, hyenas and lions. I mean, we obviously are both human. We both need each other in many, many different ways. I mean, and the most basic way is that we wouldn't be here today, or humanity as an animal wouldn't survive without both. So I find it weird. It's like the whole building blocks to a man-woman relationship is set up for perfect harmony in every possible way. But there are distinct differences, and this is the weirdest thing that I've been coming into lately with feminism is it's not even the feminist dogma anymore, any of that. It's that a lot of the things I'm hearing of feminists, I actually did a show with one. I tried to get her to call in today. She was saying that there is no difference between men and women. I mean, she'd gone so far to say, we're going to be equal and we should be paid the same. And I'm like, great, totally with you. But then she's like, she basically had this gender-neutral approach to both. And when I told her, whoa, men and women are different in a lot of ways. They have different strengths and weaknesses. They think different. They do things different. They approach things different. It's backed up by science. She was talking about how that was some weird stereotype that I needed to get over. And that's when I got scared. Between you and me, I never really would have pushed this agenda so much. Everyone thought it was mommy issues, but it was that phone call with that woman that day that really flipped my brain into psycho mode when I went, wait a minute, now we have these people that had a political agenda have gone fucking batshit crazy to now where they can't even, not only will they not have to see the distinct differences between the genders, but they're going to ignore them as if that's some political thing. And the reason I'm talking about this couple in England is they're raising their son that way, saying they don't want to put him in a box. And to me, it's like so damaging to a young boy and a girl to sit there and say, you're no different than everybody else. Not in a like we're all special trophy way, but like the things that are different, ignore them. You're going to play differently than a girl. It doesn't matter. That's the way society has raised you. That's what they're telling kids. And to me, it's shocking because no matter what color you are, no matter what nation you're in, a little boy will pick up a bar of soap and pretend it's a gun, and a girl will play with it and pretend it's a doll. It goes back since the beginning of time, since the beginning of our animal, and to deny hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and wiring and mapping and genomes and all that kind of stuff to make a political statement is shocking to me. And it doesn't bother people as much as it bothers me, apparently, but this poor kid, this little boy, Sasha, he's not a boy, he's not a girl, he's neutral. And when he goes to school on the first day of first grade, he's going to get the living shit beat out of him because the boys are going to see him as some weirdo. And, like, if you really look at nature as it is, I'm sorry, I know I jump around, but I can't help it. If you look at nature how it is, we're tribal. Humans are tribal. And when something dysfunctional comes into a tribe, look at dogs. When a weird dog comes in, they will literally bite the dog and shun the dog until it either fits into the tribe or goes to another tribe. It's very natural if something dysfunctional comes into your circle that you're going to reject it because, again, we are social animals. We rely on each other as humans to survive. So when someone comes in that's going to fuck the whole thing up, you want them gone. It's natural to bully a weird-looking kid. It's not right or wrong. Don't even put judgments. It's just natural to have that instinct. So here's this weird Sasha boy. He's wearing a blouse and comes in, the first grade class, and there's some little boy in the sandbox beating up a Tonka truck going, ooh, I'm going to smash. And he's like, we really shouldn't smash. This is a mean institution of stereotype. He's going to get punched in the fucking face. I'm telling you right now. And every day is going to be a living hell for that kid. And the parents don't look at that as putting the kid in a bad situation. They're looking as they're going to change the world with this kid. And how fucking narcissistic is that? How disrespectful is it to that young kid to never even give them a chance to grow up like a normal kid, to instantly ostracize them? At that young of an age when you're being formed, it's just mind-blowing to me. So I'm happy you call. I mean, I'll let you rebut, but there are differences between men and women. There are huge differences. And the beauty of the human condition and the setup is that men and women forge together to create, this union as parents. And they're supposed to, when they have a kid, the mom teaches the kid certain things and the dad teaches them others. That's how it's designed. That's how nature's designed. Watch fucking Animal Planet with polar bears for 10 fucking seconds. You'll see it's designed that way. So to make a political statement with your kid just makes me, I want to go find these parents and beat the shit out of them. That's all I got to say.
Well,
would you agree?
Just a side note on that. When I was very young, I used to ask my mother, why am I a girl? I want to be a boy.
Right.
But I don't consider myself, transgender or transsexual or anything like that. I've always been very much female, hetero, whatever. And however, growing up, I of course, I knew your mother in junior high school, and I was always fatter than she was, and got called the names, and kind of ended up being ostracized. Like you're saying, you're going to get beat up in school if you're different.
Right.
And I agree with you to a certain extent that, the parents shouldn't expect that kid's not going to have troubles, Right. But I do think that the world is coming around and being a little more sensitive to people that just aren't mainstream, and that's a good thing. When it comes to gender equality especially.
I mean, it's something to think about. I mean, we're not going to solve it here in the next 30 minutes, but there's one thing of making a point or saying, don't put me in a box. There's another thing to deny your true nature and your animal nature and what you are, and to try and challenge other people to say, hey, look at me this way, the way I want to be looked at, but you're not that way. It's kind of, in a weird way, it's kind of unfair, because what you're asking for the world to adapt to you and the way in which you see yourself, which is kind of selfish if you think about it. It's one thing if you want to live the way you do and then you're okay with being ostracized or beaten up and you just accept it. I can understand that actually better. But to sit there and say I'm expecting people change this because this is the way I feel, it's kind of like, if you have an abusive dad who's a drunk and saying, well, you all need to adjust to my alcoholism. No, you need to get help. So, and I hate to compare it to alcoholism, but the point is, people see you the way that you are, and the way that you present yourself. So, don't ask them to change that. It's just natural. But I got to take this other call, Phoebe. This is fascinating. Please call. You'll call in again. You promise, right?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jake.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to Billy now, and Dr. Billy Gordon is a friend of the show. Were you on hold this whole time, Billy? You wouldn't tell him your name? Was that what I understand?
No, I was on hold trying to tell them my name, and it was a technical glitch, and
Jeff's going to get mad at me.
way of trying to dominate me. It's a racist.
Billy, for Jeff, I should tell you, Jeff and Mike, Billy is the most wonderful person, but he gets a little testy. That's all I'm going to say. So now I'm just feeding the fire. Now that I got you mad, have you been listening to the show?
Yeah. Moo Moo Cowboy, how are you?
What do you think? You know about this couple, right?
Well, I've been listening to all of this, and there's so much that I have to say. Number one, is there a difference between men and women? Yes and no, and yes and no, and yes and sigh. In terms of basic biology, yeah. You undress a man, you undress a woman, there's a difference. If you look at the brain of men and women, they operate differently. There are more receptors for certain hormones in the brains of men, more receptors for different types of hormones in the brains of women. And there's a biological reason for that, and that is to promote the species, okay? And that's just a fact. And so to say that there's no difference between men and women, which I used to say that, when I was a drag queen, I used to say there's no difference between men and women because that promoted my agenda at that time. And I really did believe that at that time. But, I believed a lot of things at that time. I believe people thought that my hair was natural. But it's but there is definitely a difference. And I think that what's happening in our society is that, we're evolving so fast and the roles are not rigidly defined. Like a lot of times I look at those 50s television shows and it was simple. June Cleaver did what she did. Ward did what she did. But if they were living in a time now, June would be going to work, Ward would be going to work. They both would be getting up in the morning, teeth tossing and tinning and making themselves as pretty as possible because it's a jungle out there, And the roles are becoming very, very different and very blurred, and so that's a problem. And I have an issue with this whole gender thing because I don't like the notion that clothing has sexuality. I think that that has gender. I just think that the name of it's just not. It offends the scientist in me because the way that we determine gender or determine sex is by whether it has a penis or a vagina. And if you go through your closet, you're not going to find a penis and a vagina on any of your clothes. And so clothing is just clothing, and that stuff changes. And so, and men and women have, I think, the capacity women have the capacity to have behaviors that have been attributed to men. Women have the capacity, or maybe I just said that, and men have the capacity to have the behaviors that are typically attributed to women. And I know, because I lived my life for 20 years much more successfully in terms of as an actor and as a citizen, as a woman, much more successfully and much easier, because that's what was most comfortable for me.
Right.
You know, and but in terms of, you're absolutely right on the money, Jake, when you say that this kid that's going to school, he's going to, you know, with absolutely no gender, yeah, he's going to run into a lot of problems. You know, he's going to run, because kids are very primal and very tribal-like. And you're right, that's a typical human instinct, something that's different than how the tribe perceives, how the members of the tribe should be. They will kill it. That's the inherent thing between, like, with racism. That's what it is. Everyone always tries to make other thing, and I'm not saying it's okay to be racist, but it's very natural at first. Now, if you're an asshole and you get carried away with it, and you become prejudiced and it runs your whole life, of course that's a problem. But it is a natural instinct if somebody's a different color than you. Initially, in your animal primate brain, it is a natural instinct to fear it, right? Exactly. It's in the old part of the brain. It's in the old. See, the cortex does the thinking. You know, the prefrontal cortex sits up there and it thinks, okay. Well,
I love that. Sorry to cut you off. That's the show. That's what the show should be called, because that's where I'm coming from, and I think it puts a lot of people off because they don't get it. But that's been around a lot longer than all this other horse shit. I mean, that's more human
exactly. In the old mammal brain, which has been around much longer than the prefrontal cortex in the term of mammalian brain evolution, and also too, that part of the brain will take the cortex offline in a given situation. And that's why when people get stressed and it's a stressful situation, that old part of the brain will make you do some really animalistic things that you normally would not intellectualize that you would do.
And I have a problem with people intellectualizing everything today, because, for one thing, it's interesting in conversation, but another thing, to ignore that, to pretend that that's not there, or to judge it as something gross or evil or, you know, lower than we're evolved now and all this hippy-dippy shit I can't fucking stand. You're denying a very true part of yourself. And how can you live an honest life after that? To ignore a huge percentage of what you are and then to pretend like you're some evolved species. Like Greg Seitz and these hippies that I see around, I love them all to death, but they keep coming from that place. And when you talk about, being primal, they look at it, they put a judgment on it as they're better than it, and they're not. I guarantee you, Greg Seitz, someone breaks in that guy's house, he's going to get primal. He's not going to sit there and do it, we're all going to hold hands and preach to Mother Gaia. He's going to grab a fucking broom and he's going to try and shove it through somebody's throat. And
I'm telling you, that's exactly the situation, because I was very much one of these people that, you need to be peaceful, you need to do love, you need to do this, and and one time somebody attacked a friend of mine, and I went completely ballistic. You know, I went over to this site where these workers were, and I picked up an iron pipe, and I had people running away from there in two different directions. You know, and it was like, and it wasn't very ladylike. But
But if I were there, we're friends now. If we were deep best friends, and I was next to you, I would grab a pipe next to you too, and I would take them on with you. Like that. That's when your friends are there. I wouldn't sit there and go, "Hey, you're reacting from a really negative space, and we need to talk this out. And maybe if we all, hold hands and pray to Mother Gaia." It's like, no, someone's going to get a lead pipe in the head. It's just the way it is.
Right.
Why does that have to be so?
That's the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. People are denying, and that's why I get so mad. That's all I want to say. Now am I saying go grab a lead pipe and beat people up? What's that, Eli?
I just was mentioning, I was thinking about that kid on the playground I told you about. Who
tell this story. Really listen to this. This is why I'm mad about.
It was a 7-year-old kid who pushed, I think it was like a 4-year-old at a local park, and the 4-year-old was crying on the ground, and then the mother of the 7-year-old ran up to her child and basically asked him, "What's troubling you?"
She was the mother of the bully.
What?
Yeah, the mother of the bully.
What's troubling you?
Yeah, exactly. I see people talk to their kids like that now, where they're trying to reason with a fucking 4-year-old.
What's troubling you? And, I think that's the worst parenting in the world. Now, I don't have any children, so people will say, well, so where's your expertise in this area? Well, my expertise as a neuroscientist would say that one of the things that's most comforting to children is having parents that are in an authoritarian position. And one of the problems with parents is they don't know how to parent, and because they're too busy trying to make money to buy all these gadgets and things. And so what they do is they take refuge in this, like, oh, let's bring the kids up to the same equal level as us, and, what's bothering you, and we're going to have a timeout. No, none of that, honey. You do something like that, we're going to spank your behind.
Exactly. And I notice a lot of parents nowadays, they want their children to love them.
They want their children will love you because you love your parents, and that's unconditional. But you don't have to solicit that love, and if you have to solicit that love, then there's something really wrong there. And if you even believe that, and you should want to, and before even wanting your children to love you, you should love your child, and you should prepare your child to be a functional adult, and not having any boundaries with them growing up is just going to make them grow up and be fucked up. Oh, I love the fact that I can say that. Be fucked up.
I know, it's so great. I swear.
Yeah, because because that's what'll happen. Because they won't know boundaries. They won't be able to have boundaries in their relationships when they grow up, and they'll be aimless, and it'll just be a mess. And they'll be expecting the world to be like their parents. They'll go out in the world and they'll screw up, and they'll expect a police officer is going to come up to you after you bully somebody and say, "What's troubling you?" That never happened to me.
Well,
and that's outrageous.
Look around now. I mean, again, I live in Los Angeles, so I know it's a little bit more hippy-dippy here than anywhere else, but it's kind of a epidemic. I'll use that word. They use it for everything else. The way people are raising their kids now is like this sort of getting to understand your child, reason with your child. Everybody gets a trophy. We don't want to hurt kids' feelings. Everyone's going out of their way to solicit their love is a great word, but just so that kids don't feel any kind of pain because they were bullied when they were parents. So now you have adult kids that were bullied. I listened to Richard Simmons on Howard Stern earlier the week, and he was still crying about it. So it's like the point is you don't get over that kind of stuff, right? So here you have these 35, 40-year-old adults bringing kids in the world, and now they're using their dysfunction and their old fucked up history to try and raise the kid the way that they wish they were raised. And the kid never asked for it. The kid comes in, they want food, and they want shelter, and they want your love, and they want you to protect them, and they want you to structure an environment around them where you do have consequences. That's what kids want. So to take that away from a kid and go, let's appeal to your higher level. They're 4 years old. They eat their poop. They don't have a higher level at that age.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Plus, we're animals. And you look at the animals, and all animals do the same thing. They give birth to their offspring. They teach their offspring how to forage into the world, and in the best-case scenario, produce some other offspring and then die. I mean, that's kind of the life cycle, and that's what happens. And you don't see birds sitting around worrying about whether or not the little birds are going to love them. No, what they do is they feed them. They teach them how to catch worms. They teach them what their mating ritual is, and then they just go and they do it.
And how do they teach the birds to fly? They push them off the nest, and they fall. If they don't fly, they die.
Right. That's exactly. It's a rough gig.
I think maybe a lot of people nowadays, I don't think they understand that we are animals. We're just another animal. We're not something different than animals. So the same rules apply for us. Yes, we have language. Yes, we have better technology. We have thumbs. There's a little difference. But the meat of it, the basic of it, it's no different. I mean, to me, Super Nanny is the same as Animal Planet. If you really if you look at it the right way. So there are polar bears that most animals, they cuff their kid. When their kid's acting like an idiot or about to hurt themselves, they'll whack it upside the head. They call it cuffing in the animal community. Yeah, nowadays, I have this in my martial arts class, there's a 13-year-old boy, and his father trains with us. And today, he's 13. We call him Floppy. And he's just kind of like this nerdy kid, and he's just intimidated by everything. And he's huge. He's 13, and he's as big as me. He's a big kid, and he's strong. And when he focuses, he can be, very confident, and he can take care of himself. But his parents never made him do anything. They never made him do chores. They would always talk about his feelings. They put him in schools where everyone got a trophy. He got bullied at school one day. The kids threw basketballs at his head. They sued the school for not protecting their son, pulled him out, and put him in this hippy-dippy school where you're not allowed to say the word gun. And this poor kid comes to our martial arts class with a bunch of fucked up adults like myself and Vince, who's got knife wounds all over his body. And we're here trying to show the kid and prepare him for the real world. And he's so used to having an out, and we don't give it to him. And today, Vince gave me a big wooden stick, an actual literal wooden stick. and I was working with the kid, and I was telling him, Stan, get your footwork right, and he was kind of doing this, I don't want it, and I whacked him on the foot. Get your footwork right, like they do it in Japan, old school. And you know what? He got his fucking foot up. Now, anyone circling that park would see a grown man whacking a 13-year-old with a stick, probably would call the police. But I guarantee you that 15 minutes with me is going to help that kid in ways that you can't measure the rest of his life, because he wasn't given the ability to have an out. And when he becomes an adult, when he gets out in the real world, nobody's going to give him that. Nobody's going to sit, no boss, or if he gets drafted, God forbid, or something, they're not going to sit there and go, let's talk about your feelings. Or if someone's mean to you, we're going to pull you out of this job and transfer you to a new job. It's not going to happen. He's not prepared. And his dad looks at me whacking his son with the stick, and he's got this kind of mixed feeling, because he knows in his primal nature that that's what his son needs, because the world isn't going to kowtow to him. But on the other side, he feels like, oh, his son's not going to like him. And it's like, it does it, and it's everywhere. The feminist debate, these women raising their kids gender neutral, it's all the same thing. It's people trying to rationalize not being in touch with what they really are and wanting it to be better and asking everybody else to fit into their bullshit lie. It's so crazy.
Right, exactly. And, and see, what's interesting about it is that we have certain things that occur in a certain way in our society, and, and certain tasks have been divided between men and women. And I, of all people, would never say that, men should only do this and women should only do that. But, there was kind of a natural reason why men assumed custody of, like, competitive sports, because it just was more compatible with testosterone. And now that women have been involved in sports rather than, following the lead, that's fine, rather than coming in to the sports and becoming like the sports. What's happened is they come in and said, oh, no, we need to change this. And the men are so wimpy that men are like, they're so emasculated. The men are like, yes, honey, yes, we'll change it so that everybody gets a trophy. Yes, honey, we don't want anybody to be hurt. And that's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Somebody wins and somebody loses. I'm a Michigan graduate, and, honey, I live and breathe Michigan football. And I'm telling you, I don't want to live in a world where after the Michigan-Ohio State game that both teams win. I want Michigan to win. Or if Ohio State wins, then I'll just drink my way out of it. But it's like, but I mean, that's just really terrible. And I just wanted to tell this little story. I have a kid who's really smart that I've been mentoring, and his father's a doctor, and it's like, and I said, why are you having these problems? You're really smart, and why are you having problems getting grades at this community college? And he was like, well, grades are just never important because I grew up in this school, the school that I went to, they didn't give us grades. And I was like, what do you mean they didn't give you grades? He goes, well, they didn't give us grades because it would, they didn't want us to feel bad from having grades. And I was like, what kind of school is that? And not only was it a school, but it was an expensive school. They were like, I mean, give me a break. And they completely have ruined this kid because he has no motivation. He has no competitive edge. I mean, at least there's a lot of problems with my parents, but if I came home with anything lower than a B, it was going to be ugly.
Right.
It was going to be real ugly.
And that's how it is in the real world. If you have a job and you come to your boss and you don't do a good job, they will fire you.
Right, exactly.
That's because that's the way the world is. May not be the way you guys, and not you two obviously, but it may not be the way that you guys out there want it. It may seem mean and yucky and messy and not so comfortable, but it is the real fucking world, and you have an obligation as a parent to prepare your kid for that. The world is not going to change. And if you have a kid who you tried to change his perspective, hoping that he's going to change the world, I got bad news for you, man. It's just not going to work. It's really selfish. If you want to do anything, raise your kid, prepare him for the real world, teach him all the good and bad, and grades are important, and whip them with the stick if they don't listen, all that stuff. And then when they get older, 20, 25, and they're more abstract in their thinking, they're thinking about getting married and kids, then you can talk to them about these things. Okay? You can change.
Right.
Maybe you should get into politics. Maybe you should become a monk. And you can do all that stuff when you're older. You're not going to do it from 0 to 18. You're just.
Yeah, it's true. You know, the other thing I wanted, this is it's not off the subject, it's on the subject, but it's not about the immediate subject. And this is about, but then this is particularly directed to you, Jake, because I've seen you take a lot of heat from certain feminists that may or may not be in your family, and and so and they battered you, and they're angry, and I get it. They're women, and they're angry, and they have a right to be angry. Women have a right to be angry. Jews have a right to be angry. Blacks have a right to be. Everybody has something that they have a right to be angry about because this world is less than perfect, and I get that. But here's the deal. The deal is that I am not responsible for your anger. I mean, I have anger issues as a black person. I have anger issues as a transgender person. I have a lot of anger issues as a fat person. Right. I go to an ER room, with a gunshot wound, and people are so prejudiced against fat people, they'll tell me lose weight and you'll stop bleeding. And it's like, no, it's the truth. And it's like, so we all have our issues, but people don't get to beat up on other people because you're mad about what happened to them, and that's the problem with feminism and men, because women want to beat up on men because men in the past have beat up on them. But I'm sorry, my father may have beat you, but I didn't. Right. Or whatever. And so, and that's where we have to draw the line, where human society occurs is how we interact with each other. And so when I'm interacting with you, I can't, if I'm angry about racism, I can't just arbitrarily attack you because you're white. I mean, I'm married to a white man, and, sometimes I'll be really, really angry, and he'll say to me, you're attacking me because I'm white. You're angry because I'm white. And it took me a long time to realize that I was. That I was angry because he was white. Of course. And that's the thing.
The cult of Jake, this is what the cult of Jake is, and what I want to do the show, for all joking aside. It's that very simple thing you just said there. You can be angry. You can feel all sorts of things, but you do control the way in which you respond to other people and how you treat other people. And to separate your feelings, your emotions, to separate yourself from them, to just be a little bit objective from time to time, not saying, ignore them or put them or drink them down. Feel them, they're real. You don't attach to them. It's just Buddhism. The cult of Jake is just, it's just Buddhism. It's real simple. You don't attach. You feel things, they come up, you're human, you're going to respond just like everybody else, but then you don't let it cling to you and color your world. It passes through you. Like they say, water off a duck's back. And, the feminism issue, all this stuff, people that are raising their kids a trophy. It's like, your kid's going to get hurt. He's going to get, he might get a C and feel bad about himself, or he might lose a Little League game. And, he's going to feel that pain. But the point is, what you should be teaching him is not to take him away from that pain or put him in a place that's pain-free. You should be teaching him how to deal with that pain. The very way in which I'm saying now. You feel it, and then you let it go. And if people did that, I guarantee you. So I'm as crazy as my mother. I do think I can save the world. It's that simple. Feel things and let it go, and then don't hold on to other people. Don't get mad at other people for the way you feel, like you're saying. And then every marriage would work. If both people came to marriage and go, look, I'm upset about, I feel you didn't do this, and I had an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend who did this, and you talk it out, every problem could be solved in 10 seconds, and you'd even be happy and kissing at the end of it. But most people won't even go there. They want to go, I hate you, and then they fight for years. I don't get it.
And what's funny about most of me, and I see in my marriage and other marriages that I know, is that you have one fight in a marriage, and it just goes on. For I've been married for 24 years, and my husband and I have been still having the same fight. And everything that we fight about always comes back to this one unresolved fight. And it's just, and that's what happens, and that's what married couples tend to do. And all of it is about something that happened in the past because, people, all the anxiety we get either comes from the past, living in the past, living in the future. If we can stay in the now, we're good to go. That's what the thing is with kids, So you lost, okay? You lost. Get up, okay? Move on. You're not losing right now because the game is over. Do something new, and that's that's what we have to teach kids to do.
These parents in England, you tell them, you're a boy, so people might treat you different. Deal with it, okay? That doesn't mean we're not going to tell people you're a boy and we're going to tuck your penis in little jockey shorts. It means deal with it, okay? It sucks for everybody here. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it sucks sometimes for all of us.
I'm telling you, I have a little anecdotal story. I'll make it short, I promise. When I went to grade school, I had a lot of issues about being a boy. I mean, I hadn't hadn't like intellectualized it in my mind. Is that my issue is that I want to be a girl. I just knew that I like playing with the girls. I like playing jacks, and I like doing all the things with the girls. And I didn't like doing this stuff with the boys. And the boys had issues with that, except for I was bigger and more violent. And so when the boys would bother me, I would just like open up a can and whoop ass on them. And so then finally the girl said to me, if you don't stop beating up the boys, we're not going to let you play jacks.
Well, I want to continue. I didn't realize we ran over.
Did?
Yeah, right, Jeff? Because it says the stream left is 35. Like we did?
You haven't gone over yet. You have 5 minutes left, but Mike extended your time so that if you wanted to go over, the people listening online wouldn't get dropped. They'd get to listen.
Oh, so I got 5 minutes.
Good.
All right. I'll wrap it up. I don't want to do every show in one. This is fascinating. So, this is the problem with me doing a radio show. I just jump around. But I have to say, the last half hour we stayed on topic. Billy, you're my muse. When you call in everything, we stick to the subject.
I love it with you. I love doing radio with you.
All right,
we're gonna have you. The last time I loved doing something this month that involved a bunch of sailors and it was Navy payday.
All right. Well, I look forward to hearing from you next week. Didn't get to our other callers. I'm sorry. We normally do a 2-hour show, so this is a little bit different for me to deal with. So I did want to play a promo for my friends Mike and Jeff who have a contest. It's somewhere here. Here, I'm going to play this for you guys. Here it comes.
A night on the town this Valentine's Day could be yours. Log on to unscriptedradio.com/contest and enter the Bad Romance Contest. Tell us your worst Valentine's date story ever. A $50 prepaid card good towards dinner for two, 2 movie passes, and $10 for the concession stand could be yours if you're the lucky winner.
Well, that sounds pretty cool, I got to say. I probably will win that. But we encourage you guys to...
Where are we going?
Huh? You and I are going to dinner?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody, the callers we didn't get to. Eli, your phenomenal job before the show. People will never understand, but, I understand, and I appreciate you. And I read an article to praise your friends more, because I don't do it enough. You did a wonderful job. Thank you, everybody, for calling. I really don't have much more to say. I have millions of things to say, but I got to shut up. My wife's told me to shut up. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you.